Which NFL teams can actually win the Super Bowl in 2024? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch, back with a bit of a reaction video, but also an opinion video. My tiers for the chance at winning the Super Bowl in 2024. Ranking all 32 NFL teams into tiers based on the actual chance that I believe in my heart of hearts that your favorite team might be able to win the Super Bowl this season. And this is inspired by none other than Jason McIntyre, known as Colin Cowherd's sidekick on Fox Sports, and his list of Super Bowl tiers. So what I'm going to do is take his list, which this is his list right here, Jason's NFL Super Bowl tiers. I will take this list on my very own tier list and reorder it based on how I personally feel and whether I agree with Jason, and there will be some agreement, and whether I disagree with Jason. So let's first go over his tier list. Now that you've seen who it is and you know who it is, I'm going to show my face. I think I'm prettier anyways. Gronk spiked the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL just like this. And let me know a list or a video you would like me to react to next. So these are the tiers, 5 tiers here. We've got 5 teams in the top tier, 5 teams in the bottom tier, and then we have the middle. So he has the New York Jets, the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, Detroit Lions, Cincinnati Bengals as the favorites. Interesting. The Broncos, the Patriots, the Giants, the Raiders, and the Cardinals as the absolutely no shot. Now let's move over to my tier list and let's change some things, shall we? So, let's go. Sharing the screen. Okay, so this is Jason's list. Let's begin with the favorites. So the teams that probably have the greatest chance of winning the Super Bowl this season. The Bengals, from left to right, I believe can win the Super Bowl this year. They have an elite quarterback. They have a head coach with that quarterback that went to a Super Bowl before. They came up short, but they made the Super Bowl. They're the only current team in the AFC that's actually beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs. Tom Brady is retired. So the only quarterback to do it, other than Tom Brady, is Joe Burrow. So you have to put them in that category. They have a very good all-around defense that plays fundamentally sound, very well schemed in big games, and they have a lot of chemistry on both sides of the football. I think the offensive line is as good as it's ever been. I love the tackles this year with Orlando and Trent Brown. Mims also adds some of that depth there. I am a little bit concerned. The run defense, the run offense are probably their weaknesses, but they're so good at passing the football. They're an explosive team. They can control the football. I think the run game will be aided by the strength of the offensive line, and I do think that the pass rush and the overall defense is a little bit slept on because they had some injuries last year. But when they are humming, they are very difficult to beat. The Detroit Lions, I think if there were any season the Lions were going to win the Super Bowl, it would be this year. The Detroit Lions have a good enough quarterback to get it done in Jared Goff. Now, that is the one guy that I would say. I rank Jared Goff as the 12th best quarterback in the NFL, and I would say that he can win the Super Bowl, but this team is going to have to do a lot of other things well, right? Like, they're going to have to run the ball at an elite level. Can they do that? Probably, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, great offensive line. They have an excellent play caller. who can hide some of the deficiencies of Jared Goff under pressure, his movement skills, things like that. Goff is really good from within the pocket. If he's protected, if he could throw at the middle of the field, he's going to be really good, and he's going to be effective. They've got a number one receiver, a really good tight end. The defense improved in the secondary. So all these things, I think, line up for Detroit to be able to be a contender. They also have more experience now. They went through that experience of the playoffs last year, which I think is a big factor that people don't often talk about. The New York Jets are the interesting one. I do think Jason is a Jets fan, if I'm not mistaken, but the Jets certainly have the upside. They have the potential. They have the ability to get to the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl. Now, would I make them a favorite? If we're going by the definition of favorite, I would not make the Jets a favorite. I would probably lower the Jets a tier in the mix. I think they have a chance. I definitely think they have more of a chance than a lot of their haters think. Because let's think about it. They have an elite defense that's arguably the best, most talented unit in football. They have an improved offensive line led by a very good left tackle, which is fundamental to success. They have a really good running back. They'll be able to run the ball. They have Aaron Rodgers, who at his best could be a top 10 quarterback, and maybe even if he gets back to form, an elite option at the position. He is still throwing the ball well, still extremely intelligent for the position, and does have a lot of experience that he can bring to the Jets. They also have a number one receiver in Garrett Wilson, so they've got a lot to like. Now, where I don't like them and where I'm a little bit skeptical is the coaching staff, both fronts, from a head coaching standpoint in Robert Saleh, game management, things like that, and then also offensive coordinating with Hackett. Not a huge fan there. I also need to see the offense and how that is going to work, and the offensive line, the consistency of it, the defense maybe lacking some depth in certain areas. So will they be withstanding injuries? And then Aaron Rodgers, how good is he now? So there are questions that have not been answered, which is why I would put them in the mix and not as a favorite. Now, I do agree with the Niners and the Chiefs, and those don't really have to be discussed. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, the back-to-back champs, they're obviously a favorite. The 49ers are the best roster and team in the NFC, top to bottom. They have a top coach in the game. They have Brock Purdy, who will be ascending this year. I really think this will be the best season so far that we've seen from him. I think even better than last year. I love the receiving core. It's the best in the NFL, arguably. You add a first-round Ricky Pearsall, the Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings. You have George Kittle. You have the Madden cover man, Christian McCaffrey. The offensive line, I think, will get a little bit better with more cohesion. It didn't lose any pieces. It only added pieces. The defense, I think, is really the biggest concern, honestly. And when you're talking about a unit that is the biggest concern about a team that has Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Charvarius Ward, all these studs like Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw eventually, Hufanga coming back, when that is the biggest concern is who's calling plays on defense, how's the scheme going to evolve, how is the defense going to perform after not having a great playoffs, that is crazy to think about. So yeah, that team is awesome. Okay, so those are the favorites. Now, is there anybody in the mix category that should be elevated is the question. And honestly, I think there's possibly one team that deserves to be elevated into that category. I think some people would argue that the Ravens would be that team, given that they have the MVP, two-time MVP Lamar Jackson, a very proven Super Bowl winning head coach in John Harbaugh, and last season's number one defense. So the Ravens could be a team that some people would put here. I personally would not. I think that they're too flawed compared to last year. I think their offensive line concerns me. When Ronnie Stanley is, a big part of your line and he's constantly injured, that's concerning. Tyler Linderbaum's their best player on the O-line. But you look at the new guards, the new right tackle that's going to have to come in. They're relying big time on guys like Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar to contribute to the offense. I think their defense lost the best defensive mind in football in Mike McDonald, and they lost a pass rusher in Jadeveon Clowney and a leading interceptor in Geno Stone. There's just critical losses to the team that I don't think Patrick Queen at linebacker, that they're going to be able to withstand to be able to win the Super Bowl. I think they'll make the playoffs without a doubt. I think Lamar is a lock there if he stays healthy to make the playoffs. But in terms of winning the Super Bowl, that's a different conversation. So I'd have them in the mix because they have the elite quarterback, they have the coach, they have enough great players, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry. I think Zay Flowers is going to have a big year, right? The safeties, Marlon Humphrey, Matabike. They have enough elite players, Roquan Smith, to be able to be in the mix, but I don't think that they're quite a favorite. The Eagles, I think they're better than mid. I would not consider them a favorite either. I think there's a lot of questions from a coaching turnover perspective. Vic Fangio comes in on defense, Kellen Moore on offense. The Kellen Moore offense is going to be much different than what we've seen from the Eagles previously. They obviously have great skill talent. Saquon added to the mix with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. That's about as good as a two-receiver, tight end, and a running back as you could possibly get. Jalen Hurts will have to play better than last year in order to get to the Super Bowl again, as they did a couple of years ago. And the defense is going to have to answer some massive questions, like, can they cover anybody? How slow is their defense? Can these young players step up into bigger roles and replace some older players that have not played well recently? So the Eagles are in the mix. They certainly are talented enough, and if the coaching hits, it hits. But there's also, I think, some big questions about Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts. Can he get back to that level of 2022? So I think they're in the mix, kind of like the Jets. The Bills, they have Josh Allen, so they're automatically in the mix. But I don't know if they necessarily would be called a favorite because a lot of people are sort of underestimating them and their ability to replace Stephon Diggs and have enough skill and ability on offense to be explosive enough on offense to make enough plays in big games to win. I think the O-line is solid. I like the running game. I love Allen. I think the receivers, there's a lot of depth there, a lot of different gadgets they can choose from, but is there a for sure locked and loaded guy that they can rely on? That's a question. Defensively, they're not dynamic or alluring from a roster paper standpoint, but they are solid. They don't have really any weaknesses, and Sean McDermott can coach a defense. I know that for a fact. So the Bills, I would consider to be kind of like the Ravens, like a for sure thing to make the playoffs as long as their quarterback is there, but I feel like they're not talented enough to be a favorite. So that's where I kind of rely on them. So if I were to order this, we'll get to that. I think the team that should be in the favorite category is probably the Texans. And the reason I say that is I think the Texans, and I've said this many times this offseason, have all the elements of being an elite NFL team in this modern age. First of all, they have a quarterback that's not only dynamic from inside, but also outside of structure. He can create when the play is not given, right? When the play is not designed perfectly and the first man is open, CJ can buy time. CJ can make an incredible pass on the move or within the pocket. He can survive a bad offensive line, which he actually did last year because the offensive line was largely injured, the most injured offensive line in football. They'll be better this year in terms of health on that front. They added a really good runner in Joe Mixon. They added a dynamic receiver in Stephon Diggs that everyone's concerned the Bills lost, right? They have a really awesome left tackle. They have a really good play caller. They have a really good defensive mind in DeMeco Ryans who can go toe-to-toe with the best offensive minds in the AFC when it comes to whether it be, Josh Allen at quarterback of the Bills, whether it be Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Ravens, or whether it be, Joe Burrow and the Bengals attack, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I feel like DeMeco will not get totally outcoached in any of those settings. Plus, they added a big-time pass rusher in Danielle Hunter to combine with Will Anderson, Denico Autry, who's a really good veteran off the bench. They've got dynamic linebackers that can cover, a number one corner in Derek Stingley. They have all the elements. I know that they're a bit of a projection. A lot of people are uncomfortable about me talking this way about the Texans. I get the comments in every single video, so I understand it. But at the same time, when you look at it for what it is, I have the number 5 quarterback in my quarterback rankings, CJ Stroud, with the best trio of receivers in the league, with a good left tackle, with a good running back, with a good tight end, with good coaching, with all these elements. And you're like, why are they not a favorite? Why would they not be a favorite? Right? They've gone to that place. So to me, The Texans are in that category. The Packers are one for some people that are like a sexy pick, a darling to be in the favorite category, but I think they're more of a dark horse. I would consider the Packers more of a dark horse because I think the Packers need to like elevate in certain areas. I think Love still needs to take another step. I think the O-line is maybe a tad bit overrated just because they are the Packers O-line. They're a good O-line, don't get me wrong, but I feel like maybe, they're not phenomenal. They're not the Lions. I think when you compare the Lions to the Packers, the Lions are more dominant in the trenches than the Packers. The Packers need to prove more on defense. They've had a sloppy defense the last couple of years. They do have talent, but can they put it all together? They're seemingly missing maybe some depth at the secondary positions. They're relying a lot on young players to step up and play and perform. They don't really truly have a number one receiver yet, although they could have one if one of them breaks out. So there's just a lot of questions about the Packers still. They need to elevate to get to that category of favorites. I think the Texans have more proven talent than the Packers. They're similar teams, but the Texans have more proven talent. I think CJ is more trustworthy than Love. I think that a guy like Laramie Tunsil at left tackle is a big difference maker. I think having Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, guys that have really performed at a high level at receiver is a big difference. I think having a Danielle Hunter is a big difference. So the Packers are a dark horse, but not a favorite. The one team that stands out here, and really two teams that stand out here that I don't think are in the mix to win the Super Bowl in 2024. And the way I think of in the mix is teams that, like, if things fall their way, they could win the Super Bowl. Okay, so teams that I don't see being able to win the Super Bowl this year, the Cowboys. I don't see it. I think the O-line is too young, too much turnover there. New left tackle, a new center, right tackle kind of stunk last year. Receiving core is a little bit underwhelming outside of CeeDee Lamb. I love Brandon Cooks, the Archer, right? Arrow, shout out. But to me, like, I don't know if they have enough skill talent. The running back position is kind of underwhelming. Defensively, I think they're good, but not phenomenal. Zimmer takes over for Quinn. That's another question. And McCarthy, like, had this conversation with Der Canton Ultra on the BLV versus Consensus podcast, which is available to YouTube members and patrons out there. So if you want to sign up and support the channel, definitely do that. But in terms of, I had that conversation of, like, if Sean McVay is coaching the Cowboys, are they a Super Bowl contender? They probably are. But it's Mike McCarthy, right? Like, I like Dak, I like the team overall, but they're just not a true Super Bowl contender. The Chargers are, like, nowhere close. I would pray if I was the Chargers. The only reason they're not in the no shot is they have Justin Herbert. But what else do they really have other than Justin Herbert and a fun new coach in Jim Harbaugh, who comes from the college level, college champ, obviously national champion. But, I mean, Jason, have you looked at the rest of the roster? I mean, really, bro. Like, they have no receivers. Their running backs are very replaceable. They have no tight end. The interior offensive line is you need to pray for them to block somebody. The tackles are fun. I like the edge rushers. I think the safeties could be a pretty great tandem. I like Asante Samuel Jr., but they were a bad defense last year, and their head coach last year was a defensive-minded guy who I do respect on that side of the ball to a certain degree. He was just a terrible, head coach. But in terms of the Chargers, I have them in the pray category because the only way this works out is if, like, a receiver breaks out for them. Their offensive line, like, gets way better. Their defense gets way better. Like, certain things need to, like, really fall in place for them. So, yeah, they have the quarterback to get it done, but really nothing else, okay? So the other team that's in the mix here that's interesting is Cleveland. I wouldn't exactly call Cleveland mid, but I would also say that they're not a team that I would necessarily say, they wouldn't come to mind very high on my list of teams that could win the Super Bowl. I would say, though, that the thing that's really holding me back is if Deshaun Watson is a complete X factor for the entire NFL. If Deshaun Watson plays like he did in Houston, then yeah, they could win the Super Bowl because with an elite defense, a good running game, a number one receiver in Amari Cooper, and Deshaun Watson from a few years ago, yeah, they could make a run. They would be a terror for the entire AFC, right? We know how they play against the Bengals. They have a defense that can slow down the Chiefs. They have way more talent than the Bills. So, like, for them to be able to go on that run, it's possible, but so maybe you could consider them in the mix. I'll come back to that one. Mid, I agree with Miami. I'm not really going to say much with that one. I think they have a lot of talent, but I think there's huge concerns about, first of all, the age of their defense. I think the offensive line is putrid, and that is a concern. Their ability to play in different climates, and then Tua. All those things keep them in the mid and not really in the mix. Atlanta, I would say Atlanta needs a prayer more than that they're mid, to be honest. Like, Atlanta's defense is just not good. And to be able to win the Super Bowl, you need a better defense than Atlanta currently has. They have no legit pass rusher. They have a very underwhelming secondary past Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell. Their O-line's really good. Cousins is a good player if healthy, but we don't even really know what he's going to look like. I like Drake London. I love Bijan. I like Kyle Pitts, but like, new coaching staff. First year, they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't know, man. Maybe next year, if everything falls in line, they add a couple pieces to the defense. That's possible. But this year, I don't know about that. Jacksonville, I would agree with the mid. I think Jacksonville could even get into this category, like in the mix if everything goes right. Like Trevor Lawrence could elevate to like elite status. I wouldn't be shocked. Their receiving core is really fun to me. I really like it. I think the D-line's underrated. I think they've got certain pieces on linebacker, corner, safety. Like, I like certain players. So yeah, mid would make sense. The Bears, I think, are a prey because, to be honest, like, and I'll probably be elevating some teams. The Bears are a prey. It's a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks don't win the Super Bowl. Secondly, the O-line still needs a lot of questions to answer. Running game is a little average to me. The defense, I think, doesn't have a great defensive line, although I like the defense overall. And the coaching staff is just pretty underwhelming. So I would say that the Bears, they need to answer a lot of things. So I would say they're more of a prey team. The Rams, I would maybe elevate to in the mix, potentially. I don't really want to have too many teams in that category, though. Because with Sean McVay, with Matthew Stafford, with their offense that they have an elite attack. They have a balanced attack with Williams, with Kupp, with Nakua. They've got a defense that's young, hungry, on the rise. They added some pieces to the secondary. Yes, they lost Aaron Donald, but I still love enough of their team to really say, could I envision them winning the Super Bowl? Is possible. I don't think it's like crazy. So they are like in the middle here, like in the mix / mid. They're like kind of like in that sort of in between area. So I'll keep them for the mid category. The Colts have a ton of upside, so I could see why you would put them in this category. Seattle, I don't know about that one, man. I think the Steelers maybe could be elevated. So I'd put the Steelers up here. I think the Colts, like, if the Colts could figure out their secondary and Anthony Richardson is truly a stud, then yeah, they have the D-line, the O-line, and the coach to where, like, yeah, they have a lot of upside. So I would leave them in this category. They might be actually end up being worse than the teams below them, some of them, but they just have a lot of upside. So I think mid is fair. The Cowboys, I just lowered. That makes sense. The Seahawks make sense to me too. I really like their defense on paper. I think Mike McDonald's going to elevate that unit. I like Geno, but I don't love Geno. The receivers are awesome. Love Kenneth Walker. The O-line is a massive question mark. I actually think Seattle and the Rams are both like pretty interesting. The Steelers, the reason I moved them up, the defense is awesome on paper. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith off the edges, a healthy Cam Hayward. Mike Tomlin is a Super Bowl winning coach. Russell Wilson with a good offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith, a talented O-line that can run the ball, a play-action-oriented scheme. If Russ can just play like at a top 15 level with that defense, with George Pickens at receiver, with the running backs they have enough to make a run. And they could win a lot of defensive games, so it's possible to me. Other than that, I mean, the Panthers have to be lowered. The Commanders are freaking atrocious. I don't know why the Commanders are in the prey category. They are really bad. The Titans, I would say pray. The Vikings, I would say pray. Like, these teams have talent here. I like aspects of their roster. They've got a lot of talent. The Titans got a lot of talent at corner, a lot of talent at receiver, a really, I think, underrated O-line. I think it's going to be a lot better this year. I think the Chargers, the reason is Justin Herbert. The Saints, I would say pray. I think that's fair. The Bucks could be mid. It's possible. I just think, like, Baker, is he truly good enough to win the Super Bowl? Is Todd Bowles truly good enough to win the Super Bowl? The offensive coordinator is a question. I like the O-line. I like the D-line. I like certain players on the defense and receivers, but I don't think they're good enough. Man, this is tough. I think that's pretty accurate. I'm not going to lie. That pray category is pretty accurate. No shot. Denver certainly has no chance. The Raiders, I would move up to pray. I think the Raiders, like, I've already made a video about their roster. It's underrated. The only reason they're not, like, if they had a good quarterback, I'd probably have them, like, here. But they don't have a good quarterback, so I've got them here. I like their defense. I like their O-line. I think it's super underrated. I think they'll run the ball well. I really like their skill talent. So I think they're a prey team. If they could somehow have Aiden O'Connell be really good, then yeah, they could make the playoffs and be dangerous. But that's really the only way. You're probably not doing it with Gardner Minshew in terms of winning the Super Bowl. Maybe you could, like, win 9 games, but I don't know. The Patriots, this one's interesting to me because, yes, I'm totally biased, but the Patriots, like, just it's not going to take a lot. Honestly, like, if Drake May is a stud, we already know the defense is awesome. So aren't they closer to, like, pray than no shot? Like, did the Patriots not have, like, at least an inkling of a chance? Because if they have, they had the number 1 defense the last 9 weeks of the season last year without their 2 best players. And they do have a specimen of a young quarterback that, if let's just say he's CJ Stroud 2.0, don't they have, like, a small chance of putting something together? So to me, I'd actually move them up. You can hate on that if you like. That's cool. The Giants don't have enough talent, and their quarterback stinks. I would say that the Cardinals, they're, like, the closest team to a prey, but their defense just has no talent, and their coaching staff's still very kind of inexperienced. Kyler kind of needs to prove he can stay healthy. I think they're the best team in this category here, but I also feel like, and their offense has a lot of upside, but their defense is just not good enough for me to make a possible Super Bowl run. And so that would be my list. So those would be my tiers in terms of my Super Bowl tiers. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. That's how I'm going to go. That's how I'm going to do it. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Gronk spike the like button for more videos just like this. And let me know a reaction you'd like to see. Provide the link. Tell, hey, Mitch, react to this list on PFF or this list on Fox Sports or this video. Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's Mitch, and we'll see you soon. Peace.